Well, maybe people thought it was a dream when they were trying to buy a house a number of months ago, or sell a house or held off and missed that hot market if you're a seller, right?
Well, you know what? I think some of the dreams came true for a lot of people, over the last couple of years, Todd, and I think some of the dreams were crushed probably over the last, several months. And I think some first-time homebuyers were really disenchanted, I will use that word, by, affordability, the real estate market. What really went on here in Halifax was very, very competitive. There were a lot of listings that the realtors were getting 20 plus offers on. Yep. And, sometimes first-time homebuyers just couldn't compete. Yeah. And, I think some people, there was a little bit of buyer fatigue there as well. I think some first-time homebuyers were making offers on properties. They were just throwing things at the wall and just seeing if they could get anything. I think that's changed a little bit now, and I think it's changed for the better for those trying to get into the real estate market.
Yeah. Well, the market was overheated, let's face it.
It was definitely overheated, and it's still a seller's market, Todd, and that's what we're hearing from a lot of realtors here in Halifax. Sellers are really still in control, but they're not getting the level of offers that they were getting before. And I think real estate is sitting on the market a little bit longer than what it was. Yeah. And we're starting to see some properties that are starting to sell for at ask, or maybe a little bit under the asking price. There was quite an aggressive strategy going on here in our market in Halifax for quite some time, that the properties were being listed way, way below the market value. And the realtors were putting the properties on what they called a program, where they would list it, maybe wait 3 to 5 days and then start reviewing offers at a set time. I think that's not happening quite as much. I think properties are getting listed at the market value, which I think is positive.
Right.
And, we're certainly seeing accepted offers happening. Typically, the summer is a little bit of a slower time. I'm really interested to see what's going to happen in September. Typically, when the kids go back to school, and I use the kids like, I'm going to air quote this, university, little kids that are going to elementary school and high school. Once we get back into a fall season, typically the middle of September, things are pretty busy for us into kind of the end of November.
Right. Yeah. So the market, I guess you often said that you never thought that we were in a bubble. You never used that term.
Well,
and we've never
had
that, right?
we've never had double-digit growth here in Halifax,
right.
And obviously we know over the last couple of years it was a double-digit growth type situation. Typically, we have a very stable market,
right?
Like 1 to 3% price growth, and I think we're going to get back to that, Todd. Yeah. And I'm not sad about it. I think having a more stable market is a lot easier. It's easier to manage. I think it's a little bit easier for people who are buying and selling. And, you mentioned that maybe people that were thinking about selling that didn't. They kind of missed the mark. Right. I don't know if that's accurate. I think maybe they missed the mark in the sense of you're getting 20 offers, but it only takes one. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, I guess though, if you're a seller, you want to maximize your profit, obviously.
Yeah, and I think if you're selling and exiting the market, yes.
Yeah, that you missed it.
But I think if
it balances out if you're purchasing.
Yeah, I think if you're selling and buying again, I think we're not in a bad situation. I think it's going to be several years before we kind of get it more into a balanced market, because we need a lot more supply here in Halifax and across Nova Scotia in all types of real estate, I think, to bring the market back to, balance.
Right. The come from away effect, is that stabilized though big time?
Yeah, I think it's certainly less.
Yeah.
Specifically, I think our provincial government scared a lot of people who were not living in Nova Scotia. Right. So there is an increase in the deed transfer tax. So you have to pay more now if you buy a home and you don't become a resident of Nova Scotia. So I think that has an impact. And I think the work from home culture has changed a little bit. Some employers basically gave kind of a open-ended, we're not going back to the office. Some employers basically closed their brick and mortar offices and everybody's working at home permanently. But we're seeing more and more employers recalling their employees back into the office. And, there was certainly a time where there was a lot of people from Ontario moving east because obviously the cost of real estate. We had a very kind of like safe environment here in Nova Scotia, especially around COVID. And buying a single family home here was a lot more realistic than many other areas across the country. Still today, our average house price is somewhere around $530,000, which is a fraction of what it is in Ontario, in BC. And that is attractive to a lot of people. But I think the work situation is really what, obviously is an impact. Yeah. Maybe you're never going back to the office. But if there's a chance that you do need to go back into the office, if you're buying a home in a completely different area of the country, that could really put someone in a bad financial position if you need to sell that home quickly and get back to work.
You mentioned the starter home price point. What is that right now in Halifax? Because the average price is around $500,000, you said.
Yeah, the average house is around $500,000. There are homes available at $300,000. They do exist.
Right.
But
what kind of condition are they in?
Exactly. I think the condition probably needs work.
Yeah.
And, that's okay. It's probably in a livable condition, but it's not going to be brand new construction. It's not going to be renovated. You're going to buy something maybe in a bedroom community on the outskirts.
Right.
And I think, that's okay. But when you're buying something kind of in that price point, and if you're buying kind of outside the core, I think you need to think about there's other things like transportation and amenities. Yeah. These obviously need to be taken into account because if you now have to drive half an hour or an hour to come and work downtown,
it comes out of your budget.
That has a cost.
Yeah.
It's not just the cost of fuel, but it's maintenance. It's, it's having a vehicle. Yeah. So I think there's a balance between living in the core and having the lifestyle.
Right.
And living on the outskirts, there's time and there's money spent. And that's why I think going back to what the wants are versus the needs, and I'll just touch on it one more time, you can't change the location of your home.
Right.
Without selling it, right? So I think that's one thing to really, really think about. And I think it's really kind of making that list and checking it twice, as funny as that might sound, on what your priorities are.
And anything within 10, 15 minutes or 10 minutes of the peninsula here, that's prime location, right? North End, Clayton Park.
It certainly is prime.
Spryfield, all those areas, right?
I would say the hottest areas in Halifax are between the Cirque, which is the highway on the dark side, and in Dartmouth, and the Buy High. So that's typically the hottest area. And I think we saw some of the most, increase in price growth in downtown Dartmouth, North End Dartmouth,
right,
Spryfield, Fairview. Like that's where kind of we've seen the biggest increases. Several years ago, it was the North End and Central Halifax that we really saw the biggest increases. But I would say that has plateaued a little bit more now. And I think, as, affordability becomes continuing to be a challenge, I think further and further out of the core really has seen the kind of the biggest growth and has had the most demand.
Okay, so if people are interested in all the stuff, they want to know more about what you do, how do they get a hold of you?
I think the first step is to check us out online, Todd, at teamclinton.ca/radio. There's lots of great information on our website. I think we have over 600 blog posts now. Lots of contact information. You can listen to our show right on our website and links to all our social accounts as well. So certainly check us out online, and I really thank everybody for tuning in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for doing this. Always great, Clinton.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
All right, that is Mortgage 101, your guide to home ownership with Clinton Wilkins and myself, Todd Veinotte. Thanks so much for tuning in and listening, folks. Have a great day.